Okay, the last video that I'm recording today. Sorry, folks. This has been a crazy time. Anyway, I'm going to talk about chapter 3, The Shadow, and essentially what the shadow refers to is Madame Defarge. She becomes a shadow for Lucy. Lucy understands. I'm going to use the term metaphysical, META physical. Madame Defarge has a metaphysical influence over Lucy. Maybe Lucy can't pinpoint why she's so afraid of Madame Defarge, but she feels it. It's in her soul, it's in her skin. It makes her hairs on the back of her neck rise, so to speak. So anyway, we got Lucy in Paris. They're at, we have the mention of Tellson's Bank again. We get Defarge and Mr. Lorry to go see Lucy, and they see two women, and they're both knitting. In this case, we get to see Madame Defarge and the Vengeance. And what are we supposed to think as readers when Madame Defarge says that she wants to go see Lucy? And it's like we need to make sure it's her. So like right there, we're starting to get this scary movie, this eerie movie feeling that Madame Defarge and Lucy, something's going to happen with that. Because remember, way back, we saw that Madame Defarge had conscripted the Evermond name in her knitting, so we know Lucy is part of that. So pretty much page 265, we get Darnay's letter to Lucy, and then Lucy kisses the hand of Madame Defarge. And if you look at on page 265 after the letter, so it's 2/3 of the way down, and it says, "That was all the writing. It was so much, however, to her who received it, that she turned from Defarge to his wife and kissed one of the hands that knitted. It was a passionate, loving, thankful, womanly action. But the hand made no response, dropped cold and heavy, and took to its knitting again." So Lucy's so overjoyed that she gets a letter from Darnay, and she wants to thank Madame Defarge because she's so happy, and you just get this cold shudder from Madame Defarge. And then it says, "There was something in its touch that gave Lucy a check. She stopped in the act of putting the note in her bosom, and with her hands yet at her neck, looked terrified at Madame Defarge. Madame Defarge met the lifted eyebrows and forehead with a cold, impassive stare." So if you were looking at this as a movie, you'd be like, oh, that was bad. So right then, you have this conflict now that Lucy had no idea even existed. And we have known that this was coming, but we could just see, not from actions, not from words, but just from a feeling that Lucy gets from Madame Defarge. On page 266, Miss Pross comes back again. We're about a third of the way down. It's the paragraph on 266 that begins the lady in question, and this is Miss Pross. So the lady in question, whose rooted conviction that she was more than a match for any foreigner, was not to be shaken by distress and danger, appeared with folded arms and observed in English to the Vengeance whom her eyes first encounter, "Well, I am sure, Boldface, I hope you are pretty well." She also bestowed a British cough on Madame Defarge, but neither of the two took much heed of her. So right then we see that Miss Pross's instincts are picking up. She understands that the Vengeance and Madame Defarge, may be trouble. She just feels it. Again, that metaphysical understanding that something isn't right. So continuing on page 266, Madame Defarge says, "Is that his child?" pointing her knitting needle at little Lucy as if it were the finger of fate. So we got that fate, we got that weaving, that knitting finger. And then the shadow attendant on Madame Defarge and her party seemed to fall so threatening and dark on the child that her mother instinctively kneeled on the ground beside her and held her to her breast. The shadow attendant on Madame Defarge and her party seemed then to fall, threatening and dark, on both the mother and the child. So we see here this, even little Lucy is feeling it. So a literary term or literary concept, maybe you've already learned this, but let's review it. It's this idea called character foils, Foils, foils. So Madame Defarge and Lucy are foils for one another. And it's maybe another word for opposites, but this has more to do with characteristics of characters. That's why we use the word foil. So if you think about it, you have Lucy, who is the epitome of femininity, of loyalty, of motherhood, of being a wife, of being a daughter. She is light. She's the golden thread. She's loving. She's giving. She recalls to life, her father. She's maternal. She forgives. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have Madame Defarge. She's very dark. She's even referred to as the shadow in this chapter. My dog won't leave me alone. He's so... so Lucy is the golden thread, and then we have Madame Defarge on the other side is knitting. So we have thread, we have knitting, but both of them have a different connotation. She's knitting a registry to kill people. She's hateful, not hateful of people of her own class, but hateful for people who are oppressing her, to the point where she even scares Monsieur Defarge sometimes. Lucy recalls people to life, her father. Madame Defarge dooms people to death. We have Lucy, who has given birth to 2 children, one has died, whereas Madame Defarge hasn't had any children, so that maternal instinct isn't even there. Lucy forgives, whereas Madame Defarge holds grudges. So we're seeing these 2 women face to face finally, and we get to see how they react to one another. And not much is said, but a lot is said, if that makes any sense. A lot takes place in what is not being said, but what is being navigated between the 2 as they are getting to know each other, learning about them. Let's see, page 267. Lucy even says, let's see, where is this? Maybe I'm on the wrong page. Hold on. Basically, she says on 267, like, we are more afraid of you than of those others. So Lucy is afraid of Madame Defarge. I would be afraid of Madame Defarge. And, instead of Madame Defarge getting angry, she's complimented. She's like, good, that's kind of what I wanted. So she becomes a shadow over this golden thread. We have Madame Defarge. My dog is following my hand. Look at this. Now he's giving me the paw. Hi, everybody. So she becomes a shadow over this golden light of Lucy. And we can just feel the tension rising.